Hey, and welcome back to Legacy Builders with Bryan Dulaney. I have a special guest on the show with me today, and I met him years ago in one of Russell Brunson's highest level masterminds. Now today, I have the distinct honor and privilege of having my good friend, Brandon Poulin, share with us how he and his wife, Kaelin Poulin, took LadyBoss from zero to over 100 million in sales since they started, along with sharing how he plans to pass the torch to continue making an impact 100 years from now. All right, what's up, guys? So Brandon, welcome to the show, first and foremost.
Pumped to be on, man. Good to see you again.
Great to have you here. And so just for context, Legacy Builders really is about people who have expertise that they want to serve the world with. And they want to not only serve the world, but they want to make a great income. They want to make a great impact. And then they want to scale that impact. And then beyond that, they want to leave a legacy. And to legacy is, means different for everybody. So I'm super excited to get into the core question, I would say, of what it means to be a legacy builder. But starting back, I love your story. We met back, 2015. It's been quite a while. If you think back when we met in the inner circle. But what I'd love to hear is, when you and Kaelin launched LadyBoss, you had $1,000 in your bank account or something, to then growing it, to then scaling it, to doing tens of millions a year. Thinking back then, did you envision LadyBoss where you're at now?
No.
No.
Zero. I had no idea. To be honest, it's insane. Honestly, it's so crazy. Like, momentum is so critical in business, and just keeping the foot on the gas when things are working, and almost it's almost like we got caught up in our own momentum, right? It was like we just kept going, right? Like we kept learning, we kept evolving the mind, we kept making decisions quickly, we kept adapting. I mean, it's honestly insane when I think about it. Like, people hear the story. Most people see the kind of growth that we have, from a funded back, startup that's funded or VC backed, or, you've got multiple founders with experience. I mean, we bootstrapped this company. It was really our first. I had other businesses that were small, that were kind of like first getting started in business type of businesses, like nothing that ever did more than, maybe 200K or something annually. Right. So it's kind of crazy to look back. We had no idea, honestly. It wasn't like we sat down and we're going to create the Inc. top 10 fastest growing company, or top 5 or whatever. And that wasn't it. It was like, how do we make money to cover our rent and our car payment and our house? And, and that was the actual situation we were in when we were scoping out what is now, LadyBoss. So it's,
one of the things that I remember about you, like meeting you for the first time, that I love is that even though you hadn't figured it all out, and you most certainly didn't have the vision for where you are now, you had drive, like both of you guys did, right? Like, you were driven to create, you were driven to add value. That's at least what I remember back in 2015 when we're walking circles around the inner circle.
Yeah. I think that was like 16 or 17, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it was for, it feels like forever ago, doesn't it?
Yeah. I don't even think LadyBoss was the term yet. It was like tool time.
Yeah. It used to be called Tool Time Trainer. That was like Kaelin's maiden name. And that was like, yeah. So we completely pivoted the brand in the middle of everything, which was, a crazy couple of weeks that we did that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Would you say that was a pivotal shift? Like, can you even put your thumb on how big of an impact that shift was? Because it's a pretty big impact. I mean, it's a pretty big shift.
Oh, the brand shift?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we, let me think. I think at the time, we had probably done, I want to say maybe $500,000 in revenue at that point, maybe $1 million, if I'm accurate. And, someone had asked a question, like, what do you guys call your your tribe. What do you call your customers? You know, and that's a thing now, right? Building tribes and building communities. That's, you know, these are buzzwords, you know, now and in the last couple of years. And we're like, well, we can't call them tools.
Right.
So, you know, and then really it hit us that, you know, the brand was for women, right? It was like that was who was signing up. That's who was gravitated to Kaelin's initial story. And then we went all in on that. We went all in on the pink. Actually, we were on a flight, and the name just like God just like struck my wife with a lightning bolt in her brain, basically, and it was like LadyBoss, and it was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna call it LadyBoss Health and Weight Loss, and I'm like, what? You know, and now we're health and lifestyle, right? Because it's more than the weight loss, but that's still a big part of it. But but really, it was a big shift, because I think it allowed room for the community to grow and an identity to form. And, you know, it was a cool name. I got the domain. Like, I don't even know how I got the domain, dude. Like, that ladyboss.com should have been way harder. I think I paid like $300 for it or something. Dang. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
I was
crazy.
like, wow. Yeah, it was like just expiring, and something crazy happened there. We got the domain. Yeah, I think it was pivotal. You know, does the name, I think there's probably some great companies with some weird names, you know,
right.
Is it like it's going to impede your ability to grow? Probably not, but does it help you? I think so. You know, it's hard to measure that.
Yeah. I think they're so different names. And I think think of how many women do weight loss. I mean, there's so many, right? But to me, it's like what you do that's different is that you help women, gain confidence in who they are and step into a new way of being. And that's so far greater than just losing weight, in my opinion. Right.
Absolutely.
So it's like, I think that's a huge thing. And I love that you said it just kind of came out of the sky, like it just hit her like a bolting light. Because I have this conversation with people all the time. I like, what's your tribe? Like, what are you building? Who are you? What are you helping them to become? And like, what are you going to call them? Because a lot of people don't know. Right. And they're like, they try to figure out, they try to think about how they're going to come up with that name. Right. And I love that yours was just like a bolt of lightning that just struck you on a plane, or struck her, Kaelin, on a plane. And because everybody's different, right? There's no formula for how the name comes. I mean, some people, the name could come by serving an audience, and then eventually it comes out of someone in the community, or in this case, could be flying.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what's cool about creatives, and I don't identify as like a creative person, but I absolutely have like a different type of creativity, which is more around, numbers and information and systems and frameworks. Whereas like Kaelin, how, she's 100%, co-founder and partner with me. We're equals in our business. She's not like the secretary for LadyBoss and I run it, like, right. and vice versa. Right. Like, I'm the CEO, I run the business, I run the management team. We've got 180 or something employees, something like that. It fluctuates, but we're equals in it. And what's so cool is that she has this kind of artistic creative ability with sales and marketing and branding and storytelling. Right. And I can do those things, but really we've learned to double down on our own strengths, right? In our partnership. I look at it like, just like we would be business partners, even if we weren't married, that's how we would do it. Right. True. Because of that. But yeah, it hit her. She actually had a logo done on her phone, like by the time we landed. She was like, look, I was like, I love it. Let's go.
Yeah. Taking action is a key ingredient to success.
That's right.
What would you say are some of the keys? A lot of our audience is aspiring to hit, that 8-figure level, and up, like what, and I don't bring anyone on the show that's really not in that 8-figure and up level as a legacy builder, right? Because I think you have a different perspective when you're at 8 figures and up in terms of legacy. What would you say some of the keys were for you as you scaled from that, past 7 figures into 8 figures and then multiple 8 figures? Yeah.
So I wrote a couple of these down. I was thinking about this in the questions that you sent me. And one of the things that was the driver of us, I was trying to think like, because we basically did 200,000 and then 2 million and then 7 million and then 30 million the next year. That was like our growth path year over year. Nice. And I'm trying to think of like what took us from 2 to 7 and then press past that, right? To 10 million is what you're talking about. I mean, that's an absolute feat for anyone building a company to get to $10 million in annual revenue.
Yeah.
You're in the vast minority of that. And so I think one of the main things that I watch entrepreneurs do is they try to do too many things, or they have a little bit of success in one area, one product, one message, one offer, and then they're immediately trying to go build another one. So I think simplifying and focusing down for us, it was our top selling. I mean, we've sold at this point over 50 million shakes of lean, nice. Right? This is our top selling product. This is our top tool that we have. And, but when we first launched it, we quickly saw like, this was the hero, right? This was the hero product, right? This was the catalyst. We've done about $10 million in revenue of a digital product as well, but we quickly saw that. And so doubling down and focusing on the hero product, service, offer, like the thing that just captures the market, that just people are like, yes, that, right? And it's like, now we have all these SKUs and we have dozens of SKUs. But the reality is, it's the 80-20 rule. And I've talked to so many e-commerce companies and so many entrepreneurs about this. And it always boils down to like one, maybe two things that drive acquisition of a new customer. And everything else really is just there to support those customers or to add increased LTV to those customers, right? So I think the first thing I would say to get to 8 figures is doubling down and focusing on the hero product or service. We do the opposite as entrepreneurs naturally, especially when we're starting. We're like, oh, this worked. Like now let's ignore the thing that worked and then go build something new over here. And it's like, no, like it worked, like double down, focus, like blind yourself from other things, right? There's evolutionary stages of a business. Like there's times when you need to add SKUs, you need to add variety, right? There's examples of that, but for the sake of like 0 to 10 million, it's that, right? Like you're identifying a product market fit at scale and you just have to like laser into that. So I think that like, offering marketing wise is like, that's the key. If you don't have that, these other things won't matter. The second thing that I noted was you have to be able to leverage and identify the next team member. So you have to be able to create leverage by identifying and recruiting on the next team member, right? And it's not, I need to like have the whole master plan. It's like, no, like every organization is going to ebb and flow, and it's like a snowflake, right? The team and how things work and communication and what your org chart looks like. In the beginning, it's always very small, and that's good, right? It's okay. But you have to know like, what's the next person I need to bring on, right? What's the gap I have? Where am I feeling that pressure as the entrepreneur? Where can I easily delegate? And so the constant process of doing that is what's going to create time, for you to do the things that you need to do the analysis, to make the decisions, to, whatever that core competency that you're involved in is at that time. But creating leverage in the next team member is so critical, because it's like, work on plus in your business. It's like that, but like truly, if you're not constantly like, okay, what's the next level of where my time needs to be? If you're not in that constant process, then you'll just get stuck, right? Like your organization is your lid. Like there's a lid of your sales and your organization, your revenue, and that's your ability to grow your organization, right? And at $10 million in revenue, you're going to have, depending on your business model, you're going to have employees. You're going to have a good sized team. You might have a couple dozen, you might have 10, you might have 50. Just depends.
Yeah. How'd you get good at finding the right people, hiring the right people, train, you know what I mean? Like that's the
How
probably.
to get good at it?
Yeah.
Doing it?
Yeah. Like what was that journey like for you? What was that process like for you? Cause we're not all born with like those skills, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's painful is what it is. People are like, man, I want to have a $10 million business. I'm like, you don't even know what you're asking.
Right.
But no, it's so fun. I always say like building a company is the hardest, but most rewarding thing like I've ever done. Like I'd compare it to fatherhood, right? You got to, you got a little one, and another one, just came in the picture. So, we were talking about this on our trip, so I think, how did I get good at it? I think it just boiled down to, I recognized that I couldn't do things alone and that I needed to create leverage. I was constantly, okay, like when I sit down and plan my week and I've got a whole system and process to do this, what's on that list? And I'm like, and I look at that list and I'm like, which of these things should be delegated or which one should I actually be doing? And that's like the thing of building an organization to support $10 million in revenue without killing yourself. Right. Personally, like, cause I've been there as well. Like I was the one man executive band for a $30 million company for a year. Right. And it was exhausting, and we got stuck, right? It was exhausting. Like this is well beyond a $10 million a year example, but we got stuck at 30, and the next year was like 33, and that was like the first time we had kind of stalled, right? And it was because my inability to do what I had done so well up to that point, which was sit back, look at like what's important. I'm planning my time, looking at my time. I'm always asking myself, should I be delegating this? And then once that need is repetitive, it's like, okay, there's someone I need here. Right. And so I think the only way you get good at it is just by doing it. And there's a whole process, right? Cause you got to identify who you need. Right. And then from there, it's like, okay, here's the functions that I need to fulfill. Now, like what kind of position? Then you go look at the marketplace, understand titles and positions, piece that together. Okay. So I got functions, map it with that. Budget, and then you got recruitment process, right? So there's a whole lot of steps to it, but
so it sounds like yours came out of pressure.
Oh yeah.
Because you took on too much, right? Which typically entrepreneurs, we do. So you took on so much, you're like, shoot, you had so much pressure. You're like, we need to grow. Like I can't do everything. And then you saw the holes and then you filled the holes essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's interesting because looking back, and I think there's two ways this happens. I think if it's your first time growing a business of that size, you don't even know that you're going to be able to do it. You don't have this confidence of like, oh, I'm going to like spend all this money up front and like build this team and then we're going to go get busy. Right. That's how like people who have experience in building companies, they come around the second time and they're like if I did it again from scratch, it would be a different approach. But when you're when you're bootstrapping or you're building your first company, like, you don't have the funding, you don't have the experience of that. So you basically just wear all the hats and then slowly you take one off at a time, and unite the people that are going to support you and help you grow around you. And help you grow. Totally.
Now going back to what you said originally, so about really finding what works, what sells, what scales, right? And then going deep. I mean, you guys that was a process for you guys, right? I mean, you guys did info and then coaching and then supplements and you know what I mean? Like it wasn't just let's launch a supplement brand and then, oh, that worked. And then you went, right? You tried other things before you figured that one thing out that really scaled. What was some of the metrics or the identification that this was it that you needed to scale? Because from what from the timeline of the story, right? It was like a couple of years really till you got to that place where you're like, this is the thing that can scale, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were all digital for about 1 to 2.5 years before we introduced our supplement line. And, look, so here's what we did. We were all digital. And then at our first live event, so added live events, we launched and sold our coaching program and our supplement line at the live event. Terrible idea. I'll never do that again. We signed up every single. So number one, we took this is a hilarious story. We took literally all of our staff. Like I think it was like 15 of us at the time, right?
Right.
We sold tickets to our first live event, right? So like 500 tickets to a live event. The entire 15 people who run the whole e-commerce business, like flew in, a couple drove, and to man the event, right?
Right.
While there's still this whole company going on. We get there Friday, like at noon, and the event started Friday night. Terrible idea.
Dang.
Oh yeah, it was crazy, man. We were wild back then. We were just like, we would just go for it.
Yeah.
And then we decided to launch a supplement line, right? And a coaching program at that event. And we had everything lined up on the back end, but it was like, wait, you're going to launch 2 new product categories, product lines, completely different businesses at the same time during your first live event with all your staff working live event.
Right.
Terrible idea. I would never do it again, but it worked. Like, we signed up like 70 people in the coaching program. We signed up like the whole room on the supplement line, and
nice.
Off we go. But
if you were to do it again, which one would you have rolled out?
If I was to do it again, I just would have done them in, with space and time to really I think we put a lot of pressure on the people that were with us at that point. Some of them stepped up to it. Some of them, it was tough for them.
Right.
But that's you got to get scrappy though. You can't lose that either. So I think I definitely would have been a little bit more methodical about that. But again, when you're new, like you don't know, and this is where it's like the only wrong action is no action.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. You were testing 2 offers. They both sold.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I mean, our coaching program has been phenomenal. We've helped, I think well over 1,000 in a one-on-one environment like that. It's such a cool program for those that invest in it. And obviously the supplement line, we've done over $100 million, $150 million in supplement sales. So it's great. It's just the sequence there. So I would take my own advice here and go tell myself like, hey, like one thing at a time. You know what I mean? So,
but you still have the coaching, right? Like you still do coaching. You still have the info, you still have the supplements, you still have the coaching. So you still do like they're all in your value ladder, so to speak. Yeah. Right. It just, the one that really makes the most impact is the supplement, the products.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Going back, so I'm a big morning rhythm guy, morning rituals, rhythm, whatever you want to call them. I call them morning rhythms, but really they're rituals. Would you say, has there been any consistent ritual that you embody or you do on a day-to-day basis that you would contribute to your ability to be focused, to get things done, to perform? You know what I mean? Is there things that you do, and even at night too, right? Do you have that type of ritual, or is it different for you?
Yeah, well, I think that it would probably be more consistent. And when I mean consistent, I mean it's shifted over every quarter. It seems to shift. But I also have 2 young kids in my house, so I've got, I don't know if it was you I was talking about or someone else I was talking to about this, but it's almost like every 3 months. When you have young children in your house, because I've got a 8-month-old and a 3-year-old now. And so it's the kids are changing your kind of lifestyle and your phase every quarter. It's they have different needs and have different demands of attention and schedules and stuff like that. So it hasn't been perfect, but absolutely, man. I think when I wake up, I really try to engage with my family first. Do I follow an 11-point checklist? No, but do I do the same type of things? Wake up, brush your teeth, breathe, oxygenate, get water in, chug water, take supplements, get my shake in, all those things 100%. There's steps to it, right? But I get my family time in. I read and I study a little bit in the morning just for 10 minutes, just to get my mind right. I breathe, water, maybe a little coffee, right? So I think there's definitely a sequence to it, but I made a post a couple months ago. It's like work doesn't really care if it's 4 a.m. or if it's 8 p.m. or if it's 11 a.m. Like I think people really have to get in. I like the word rhythm that you used, and I totally align with that as well. Of like, it's not like balance or routine maybe, but more like rhythm, because I think as humans, we absolutely like, I know that I'm better when I'm on a routine, right? And I've got that rhythm. But I'm also not like, I let it flex to like the needs of my life. I'm not like, shoving. And that's what's so interesting is like with the kid dynamic of young kids, it's like everything's evolving. It's like they get up sooner, they'll wake you up, they'll come in your room at night, or you're up at night because of the baby or whatever. And so stuff like that throws a curveball, and that's where you just have to be willing, to adapt. But
oh yeah, totally. I mean, when we were, single or no kids, I mean, it was very different, right?
Oh, yeah. Totally, man.
Things completely shift when you have two little ones. And
I don't know what I did with all my time before I was a dad. I don't even know what I did.
I know, right? I can't even believe we had that much time.
I know, right? It's like every second is like something needs my attention these days,
Right. Exactly. Tell me a little bit about the revelation you had. So you posted right on social media. I don't know if you were referring to that one, but you talked about, you posted a picture of your daughter, Revlin, and she was talking about, you're talking about her first words, right? Did that shift? Like, what revelation did you have in that moment, which was only a couple weeks ago, about fulfillment, not just being about work and finances, but being about family and legacy?
Yeah,
right?
Totally. That's been on my mind a lot these days, to be honest with you. There's data that shows that happiness and fulfillment stops increasing proportionate with income after $70,000 annually.
Wow.
So every incremental dollar you make over $70,000 a year doesn't actually, via survey data, make you any happier or more fulfilled, which is mind-boggling, right?
Yeah,
when
it is.
We think that we're going to get to some end and have some number or position or influence or follower number, whatever it is, it's not going to matter. I can promise you that, right? Like our first customer, I remember the email, her name was Yolanda. It was like $23.49, right? I remember that. And that made a greater impact on me. The first customer, just knowing like this thing worked, right? And that like our bills were paid, you know what I mean?
Right.
Had a larger impact on me than when we hit the ink number 4.
Right.
Like literally, like it just, so, so what's so important to me is, my faith, my family, and, absolutely my business. I love business. I love growing it. But success at the expense of everything else is not success. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say, so I remember so I had this thought, like when I was back, I'm thinking back in my college days, but would you say like there's an order of priority for you in your life? Like family, business, faith, faith being God, like I remember being in college and having this conversation of being like this priority of organization. Would you say like you have that priority of organization, and how does that play out?
Totally.
Yeah.
I 100% do. It's faith. I'm a Christian. I follow Jesus. I believe in the Bible, faith, family, and everything else. I don't know. Like you want to put in that bucket, like you can't put your health over your business. Cause it's like, well, if you don't have one or the other, like how are you going to eat? Or if you're, in the hospital, how are you going to work? Like, so I think absolutely. And, just because you spend more time doing one or the other doesn't mean the priorities are have to correlate with time. Right.
Yeah.
I think people are like, well, I spend like 8 hours a day working or 12 hours a day working, but you don't spend 8 hours a day playing with your kids. Like that doesn't mean that they're not a higher priority.
Right.
Like my kid would be sick of me after 8 hours a day. Like,
right.
he'd be like, Daddy, leave me alone. I'm, but if I don't get that hour in of like engagement one-on-one, like that's what she needs. Right. So,
totally.
I think it plays out in the day-to-day decision-making and how you spend your time. Right.
Right.
And giving each sector the time that it needs, and, not putting so much into one that the others are sacrificed. I think that, we don't need to debate the misery and the suicide rates and the depression of the rich and famous.
Right.
And so, but at the same time, like, I'm not demonizing work. Like, I work a lot. Like, I love to work. I'm always like just trying to do stuff. That's my nature. Right. And we were created to work. Right. Like,
true.
Like, there's also statistics that show when you retire, you die. Right. Like,
it's true.
Not because you're old, but because you do nothing and you just whittle away. Right. And
you have no purpose,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so you need work, you need purpose. But I think going back to that word rhythm, like, I think life comes in seasons and it'll shift, but you have to constantly be evaluating the rhythm that you have and allocating that time where it needs to go. Because as soon as, like, man, I feel like an old man. Like, I should be covered in gray hair. Like, my wife always tells me, she's like, you're like 55 inside. I'm 28. Thanks, honey.
Right.
But it's like, it's truly, through the process of growing and becoming financially independent and, I don't have to work, right? Like, I'm at that point, like, I don't have to work anymore.
Right.
But I do, because I get joy and fulfillment out of it. And it's exciting. And, like, if you don't have a purpose, like, you're going to whittle away. And so I think the priority, going back to that, I think that's a spiritual question as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I think it's interesting. Like, I came to faith not through, like, growing up. I didn't grow up in church, but I actually had success in a network marketing company, and I was 19 and I had a free BMW that was paid for. I had a house. I was making 6 figures. I could do what I want. By any, like, measurement of success at 19, it was insane that I was where I was. Yet I was so unfulfilled and empty, and that's what, led me into a church that I went to, and it was like so opposite of, like, what everybody, like, everyone was like, these are all the things you're supposed to have. And then I felt like I had them, right? Like, I was on stages. I did a training in front of, like, 600 people at the biggest hotel in my city. And I had people knew my name, people wanted my attention. Like, I had influence, I had money, like, I had all these things. And yet I was unfulfilled. And so I think that if you don't have that priority, you'll eventually figure out that you need a priority like that, because there's always going to be another dollar to chase, another initiative, another person to hire, another market pivot, another meeting, another podcast. Like, it never ends. Right.
Yeah. What was the catalyst for you to even go to church? Because that is not common, when success is flowing, right? It's like, oh, let me go to church. Like, what was at that moment in time, what was the driving force?
I was, like, literally like, this is it. Swear. Like, I remember it like yesterday. It was like, I was like, really? Like, this is it? Like, this is all there is? Like I can buy stuff. I got a nice car, I got a house, people want my attention. I've got influence. And, like, by most people's standards, like, people work, 8 years after high school to make 6 figures, 10 years, 15 years. And I was, like, there at 19, and by most people's standards, it was like everything that you could want. And I was like, I take it all back. It's not that great.
Yeah. So you were feeling a void spiritually, and you went to seek out that void ultimately. Right. And 100%. Then that opened up a whole new world, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the pastors at my church in Albuquerque, I'm in Austin now, but he was like, your story's so weird, man. He's like, people come here because, like, they're like someone dies in their family, or they're like at the end of themselves. There's like a medical crisis, and they're like, I have to turn to God because I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
But you're like, you had everything and you came here. I was like, yeah, isn't it weird? But like, that's the story. It was like, it wasn't like some influence from a family member or anything. I was just like, there has to be more than this. You know?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, it's not normal. Yeah, normally people hit rock bottom and then they seek God, right?
Yeah.
Versus hitting, a high level of success and then seeking God. It's not normal. For you, what would you say, like, it means to build and leave a legacy? Like when I talk about legacy, what comes to your mind?
Man, that's such a deep question. I like it.
Wait till the next one.
What's that?
I said, wait till the next one.
Oh, here we go. We're just getting loaded. So I think when it comes to leaving a legacy, I think your family is your legacy here on earth. I think when there's an eternal legacy that you're living for, and that's a spiritual conversation, that's number one for me. And so that's a whole box that I won't open right now. But when I think of the legacy here on earth, I think about my family and the values that I pass to them. Right. I think, it's great. Like my kids are never going to have to worry about paying for rent or food. Right. Because of the things that are set up for them. But I know that they'll be spoiled brats if like they can just like buy a Ferrari in high school, right? Like no way that's going to happen. So I think I think that I think of my family. I think of personally just what I was known for, right? Like I've always wanted people to say like Brandon did what he said he was going to do. That's something that's important to me, like being a person of your word, that your word has value. And so I always try to espouse that. And also in terms of legacy, doing an interview like this, and, I spent a lot of time building this great company and doing these things. And I didn't talk about it. Like honestly, like Bryan, people would send me podcast interview requests and like, hey, I want you to write a part in this book. And like, I just declined it all. I'm like, I'm just focused on doing my thing. Right. I don't need to be like telling everyone about what I'm doing. Right. Like people are like, they make $100 online and now they're like teaching people. And I'm just like, I just like hustled and, in private, like I didn't announce it. Like I didn't post a gym selfie every time I went to the gym. You know what I mean? Which it's fine if people do that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. But ultimately, I have been thinking a lot more about that. And now it's like, man, I remember how hard some of these problems were for me. And if I had known what I know now, like that's a legacy I could pass on to other people. And so, doing interviews like this and things that I'm thinking about for the future, and passing that information, because I spent 10 years, building a company and doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, being able to translate that to people so that they can skip the heartache and like skip all of the pain that I had to go through that I learned, they can learn through my experience. I think that's part of the legacy, and from a business standpoint, Nice. So I think there's a spiritual legacy. I think there's a family legacy through my kids and their kids, and I want to have more. I have two. I want to have more kids. And then I think there's a business legacy, through that experience and, books, coaching, training, stuff like that. That's in my future.
Yeah, no. And you teed up my next question, which was really thinking about like, how do you pass the torch in really three different areas, right? So passing the torch of your legacy in terms of financial, the way that I look at it is financial, spiritual, and then also as it relates to the wisdom, the knowledge, the expertise that you've developed on your journey, right? And I think some of the great examples of that are, look at Napoleon Hill, right? With Think and Grow Rich. He wrote that book and it's still impacting people's lives, right? Yeah. Or you think about the 12 disciples, right? Like everybody knows the 12 disciples, right? The 12 disciples are still making an impact. Obviously, Jesus is still making an impact. He's God, right? So he's still making an impact. But it's, thinking about your life, now going forward in the future, I always like to ask the question of, like, in 100 years from now, like, what are some of the things, some of the strategies, some of the investments, some of the things that you're doing on those three levels, right? Financial, like, what are you putting in place now for your kids and their kids? I think out like 3 generations, right? Your kids, future. I think now more than ever, like, we need to be thinking about that, right? Yeah. If we're not thinking about that, then this place is going to be a shit show. So I think it's people like us that we need to start thinking about, what are our kids' futures going to look like? Because we're shaping it, right? And so for you, what are some of the things that you're doing, thinking about, putting into place for that reality to happen in those areas? Financial, right? As it relates to your expertise, and then spiritually. I was on the golf course about, I don't know, 6-7 months ago with a mentor of mine. And he was talking about how he was setting up his family trust and his banking structure, like all of his structures. And he was saying how when he's gone, he wants to be continuing to save lives for the kingdom. And that really got me thinking, right? Like, what am I doing right now that when I'm now no longer here, which I don't know when that day is going to be, but when I'm no longer here, am I still making an impact for the kingdom? Like, am I still making an impact? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, those are big questions, man. I like them. So I think financially, yeah, I mean, I have trust set up. I have special accounts that have tax advantages, and I have an investment thesis, and I have an allocation that I'm striving for, and there's a lot of strategy around entities that are being set up. Trust protection, creditor protection. These are all factors, right? And that plan isn't necessarily like a one size fits all. I think you need to have really smart people in your corner for those things. I feel fortunate in that way. But one philosophy I will say about this is, like, my kids are not going to just walk into like a bunch of money. That there's no way that's going to happen, because I came from literally nothing. Like, I had a good childhood. I didn't want for anything. Like, I was middle class. Like, I had a scooter. I had a room. I had clothes. You know what I mean? Like, I had a good childhood, man. I didn't have like some awful, like, I don't have some awful story there. Like, yeah, my parents divorced, but it's fine. They're great. Like, both my parents are great, but I didn't want for anything. But I certainly was never handed anything. Right? Like, I did chores, I earned my keep. My kids are doing the same thing, right? Like, I've got a nanny. Like, as soon as they're able physically to do things, they don't have that nanny anymore. Mom and dad are rich. You're broke. Romy, Revel, you guys are broke. You got nothing, right? You got stuff because I give it to you, and you live here because you take care of your chores so you can be here, right? So I think that's like a financial, like, that's like where the spiritual or the family and the financial, like, weave together in that way. And so, yeah, they're going to have clothes and food. And if they want to start a business, they'll get some capital for it. But there's no trust fund where they run around and get whatever. Like, no, that's not going to happen with my kids. I think you just, I think everybody knows someone knows a kid like that. And you're like, gosh, he's just like, and so I think that's super important from a financial perspective. From the expertise, Brian, I kick myself for not, writing down more and talking more about the journey along the way, right? The last 7 years of LadyBoss, and, growing the number 4 fastest growing company in America, right? Without any funding. It was the number 1 fastest growing B2C company in 2019, right? Right. And I mean,
dude, a lot of wisdom in there, man.
Yeah, but I got it. It's just not. It's not all out there. So I'm moving towards that. I've been writing a lot more things down and formatting it, and so that comes to mind. But I think that, like, books and podcasts, and I think that's a really cool legacy. Like, there's no way, like, your kids are not going to go listen to these podcasts you're doing. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, we didn't have that as kids, right? Like, our great grandfathers, like, they didn't have that technology.
Yeah. Like, maybe they had a journal. Like, I've never gotten a journal, right. And so I think that's super cool to do. And ultimately in 100 years, like no one's going to remember LadyBoss. Maybe I'm a teeny tiny percentage of companies that last that long, but most, if not all companies will be gone in 100 years, won't exist.
Right.
My name, I'll be like your old great something,
right.
Your old great Brandon, it's like, it's gonna all turn to dust eventually. So I think it's cool to leave that behind from an expertise standpoint. And then, I think that spiritual component, that's a big box to open up about what that looks like long term. But you got to think about it, And honestly,
it's true.
Bryan, the fact that you're thinking about it is incredible because most people aren't. Most people aren't thinking about it. Most people are thinking about this today, tomorrow, next week, maybe next month. Small few amount of entrepreneurs are thinking about next quarter, even smaller next year, And so you look at the most successful organizations in business, and they're planned out 5 years,
right?
3 years. Right.
It's very few that are people. There's very few organizations that are thinking beyond 5 years.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Not many people think about it. That's why, I started to think about it. And I started thinking about it because I died and came back to life, and I have a little bit of a perspective on that. Right.
Just a little bit, man. Just a little bit.
Yeah. So
I just died and came back to life. No big deal.
Yeah, exactly. But everyone who listens to my show knows that story. What would you say some principles that you want to pass on to your kids, right? Like what are some of the core fundamental principles or values, right? Like I know mine, but like what are some of yours that you want to pass on to your children? I mean, you're going to have 5 more? So
5. Don't be putting that on me, man. I don't know about 5 more. A friend of mine, he said he's got 8 kids. Right. And he said, you'll know when it's your last one. You'll know when you're done. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah. So I follow that advice. I'm going to have 8 kids, but I like the advice. I think it's like, well, how many do you want? It's like, I think we'll know when we're done. Totally. I like that. Just go one at a time. Maybe there's 2. Yeah. You could plan 1. It might be 2. Yeah. Who knows? But no, I think the things that come to mind, I actually did an exercise, I was like last week, and I don't have quick access to it. I don't want to stall our interview here, but I know that in that exercise, I laid out some of these things. I know top of mind, I want you asked the principles that you want someone to remember about you. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Well, what principles do you want your children to embody, to really carry with them into their future? You know what I mean? Like for me, right? It's like my dad always said to me growing up, it's like, there's no such thing as I can't, only I can and I will. Yeah. And it was because I didn't want to do work around the house. He's like, there's no such thing. It's kind of funny. He's like, there's no such thing as I can't. It's only I can and I will. And it's because he wanted me to do yard work. Yeah. But it was such a good, valuable lesson for me, right? I'm passing on to my daughter, right? So is there any of those type of things for you?
Oh, there's so many, man. Yeah. I mean, that's a great one. Like I catch Romy saying I can't. And I'm like, no, it's you don't want to. Let's be honest here. That's different. Yeah. But let's acknowledge what it is first. I think just doing what you say you're going to do is huge. I think there's just such a lack of follow through in life. I think people are just like, people just say stuff, people say stuff they don't mean, they promise things they don't deliver. And, I think above anything else, I want my kids to know God, and I want my kids to put God first, because putting him first means putting all of his wisdom first, which is insane. Like if you're religious or not, go read Proverbs. It'll blow your mind. Like you think you've read, great business books with principles, like go read Proverbs and tell me what you think, So I think that's a huge one. I think that, Poulins, that's who we are. That's our family. We act with integrity. We do the right thing when people aren't looking, right? Like I'm such a bad liar. Like people like play jokes or like pranks, and I'm terrible at that stuff. Cause I'm like, I'm just like, I don't know how to be incongruent as a human being. Like I am who I am. And like, I'll be like on the golf course, right? And it's a gentleman's game and you're keeping score in your head. And I like agonize over like, oh, did I calculate that wrong? I'll just take it off. Right. Like that's how that's just how my brain works,
right.
And so that's what, I want to pass that on to my kids. I want them to work hard to what they want. I want them to work hard for what they want and drive towards what they want. And I want the world to tell them what they want, because everything in the world and in news, and when I say like world, I mean like the popular mass opinion of like what is going to fulfill you. Like I want them to identify and get a download, for them, what they want to do, whether it's being an entrepreneur or not, that doesn't matter to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, do I think it's great to be an entrepreneur? Yes. Do I think that entrepreneurs are more happy than people who aren't, or more fulfilled? No, I don't. I think that if we were all entrepreneurs, there'd be nobody to employ, and that wouldn't work, and vice versa, right? So I want them to get that revelation for themselves and to go after what they want ruthlessly. Like I want them to just attack it. So I think those are some things that come to mind.
Awesome, man. Well, I love that. And we can be here for hours talking, but I know we've got a hard stop. So where can people learn more about you, follow you? Like, I know you're super private, but is there a good place that people follow along to your journey?
I post on Facebook and Instagram. So, Brandon Poulin CEO on Instagram. And then I think /Brandon Poulin CEO on Facebook is what it is. I should know that. That's what it is. Yeah, that's what it is. So tune in, or, if you're a lady, go to ladyboss.com. If you're a guy, don't go to ladyboss.com and buy your wife or your girlfriend health products. That's, probably not a good idea. There might be some women out there. Like my wife was like the one that wants a treadmill for Christmas. I'm like, are you sure? But no, I'm just playing. So,
right.
Anyway, thanks for having me on, Bryan. It was fun, man.
Yeah, it's been great. We can talk for hours, and thanks for being with us today. Thank you for joining me on Legacy Builders, and I would encourage you to come back to the next episode next week to get more clarity on your journey to launch your expertise online, scale your impact, and build your legacy. If you're ready to get the process started of launching your expertise online the right way, then I recommend go to launchexpertise.com. Or maybe you're at a place where you're ready to really scale your expertise and your impact. Go to launchexpertise.com. There you'll have several options. Number one, you can get a free copy of my brand new book, The Entrepreneur Evangelist, which I share the secrets that have unlocked more than $300 million of results for my clients and partners in our own campaigns. You could also join a 33 days of coaching with me that's free, where I give you insights and wisdom on your journey to launching your expertise and scaling your impact over the course of 33 days. And that's worth at least $5,000, but for right now, you can get it for free. And lastly, if you're someone who wants to take the absolute faster, smarter path when it comes to launching your expertise online and scaling your impact, I'd recommend scheduling a call with my team where we can see how we can support you to crush goals and generate 7 or 8 figures yourself in a short period of time. We have more awards than nearly anyone in the entire community, and for good reason. And we would love to help you just like we've helped them. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Legacy Builders.